Welcome to another episode of the Impro Pod podcast. My guest today is Malaika Kegode. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Can you introduce yourself a bit?
Yeah, of course. So I'm a writer and performer. I started my artistic career as a poet, spoken word poetry at festivals and rooms above pubs and things like that. And that's grown to include writing for radio, writing for theatre. So I'm like at this intersection of live performance, and I also facilitate lots of workshops and mentor artists and non-artists to take creativity and find well-being in that, and find a lot of joy and honor in being able to be artistic in yourself and take that out into the world. I've done lots of workshops for organizations like the Prince's Trust or the King's Trust, now that he's the king. So working with young people who might find themselves at a sort of disadvantage in the world. So I do a lot of that. But I also do a lot of work with emerging artists and people who are transitioning in their practice in some way. Because I went from this poetry world to now being quite firmly in the theatre world and the radio world, I know how strange that can be, that kind of transformation of your practice and of your process. So I try to support people in that. And then for my own writing, I write a lot for the stage. So I've got a show called Outlier, which took spoken word and music and created this autobiographical show about growing up in Devon. But I also wrote a show called The Colour of Dinosaurs, which is about melanin in dinosaur fossils and how that helps us to connect. And that's a kids' show. So it's a big spread of different things and finding creativity in unexpected places.
Yeah, I saw that with my sister. It was great.
Yeah.
And I really like the fact that he was the actual guy?
Yeah. Jakob. Yeah, the actual guy who discovered this amazing thing about dinosaur fossils is in the show.
And he was just playing himself.
It's amazing. It was so fun, finding that out. He was really keen to actually be in it himself, because at first I was just having chats with him about his research, and then it transpired that he was really up for being part of it, which is great.
All right, so I'm going to play you a piece of music, and I'd like you to tell me what it makes you think of. So that's anything that comes into your mind, any kind of thoughts, ideas, emotions, but don't overthink it. And it's all completely improvised, so I haven't thought about it at all. So what did you think of that?
I love that. I'm always amazed by what comes out in improv. It felt quite nostalgic. And then the image that kind of came into my head was rain, but not like a downpour, but just the very first spots of rain. I think those sort of occasional high notes made me think, when you're outside and you're like, is it raining? I can't quite work out if it's raining or not. And there was something theatrical as well. And at first I was like, is this the moment where you step out of a theatre or a cinema or something with a friend and you look out into the world and it's, there's a whole world out there. It's raining a little bit, so you just stand under the cover of the foyer talking to your friend for a bit. I was thinking maybe it's the end of it, but then as it picked up and became more full, it felt more like a beginning. So I was like, maybe it's like you're standing waiting for somebody. It's just starting to rain and they arrive, and maybe you're a little bit nervous about how things were going to go because you've not seen each other for a while, but then things warm up and you're able to click into that conversation before going in. And that final sort of sustained note for me was like, okay, we've caught up, we're all good, we're going to head in and spend the evening together.
Nice. So something about that, building up on that A major. And it evolved a little bit, and it went a bit discordant. So standing outside some sort of cinema.
Yeah, yeah. The beginning of a night. Obviously, when people listen to these, they're bringing in parts of their brain and parts of their experience. And maybe it's because I've not been socializing much recently. But yeah, it reminded me of that moment when you're meeting up with somebody that you've not seen in a while and you're a bit nervous about how it's going to go, if it might be awkward, even though you're friends. But then they arrive, and when that fullness builds up. And I think that discordancy, it's like occasionally you might say something and you're like, "What an idiot, why did I say that?" But it just carries on and it's fine and it flows.
So I'd like you to tell me a story of some kind. What I'm going to do is break the story down into sections and then improvise a soundtrack to the story.
So I've been thinking about this. It's quite exposing to tell a story when you're a storyteller as your job. The first one that came to my head, it starts in the Barrel House in Totnes, which is a music venue. For those who don't know, I grew up in Devon. We both grew up in Devon. And I really wanted to tell a story about walking, because when you grow up in Devon, you just walk everywhere, right? The buses are terrible. Barrow House, Totnes, I am out with my mum, which is quite rare. She's not really a going out partying type of person, but that was really nice. I can't even remember what the gig was, but we went to this gig at the Barrow House. We turn up, and I realised that my current boyfriend's ex is there. So she was, and still is, I think, absolutely beautiful and so cool. And I always felt a bit embarrassed around her because I was with her ex boyfriend, but the way that we got together was a little bit like tumultuous, to say the least. Yeah. But I was like, I really want to be this girl's friend because I think we'd probably get on if it weren't for this boy between us. A couple of drinks deep, we start chatting, and I'm like, oh, this is going really well. My mum is going home. So I was like, oh no, I'm going to stay. I'm going to stay and befriend this person. And we ended up going back to her house in Buckfastleigh. And I was like, maybe this is it now. Maybe we're going to become friends. Would that be weird? I don't know. But I was so excited. And we got to her bedroom, and just something shifted because a lot of people were there, but then suddenly they were not there anymore. And it was just me and her in her bedroom. This has gotten weird now. She was being very polite, but I could tell she was a bit like, why are you in my house? And it was, Luke, it was painful. You know, when you're so painfully self-aware and trying to be cool and chill when you're absolutely not cool and chill. I put on some YouTube videos that were way too loud and she was cringing. It's time for me to go home. So I decide I'm going to walk from Buckfastleigh, where she lived, to Ashburton, where I lived. It's not a really far walk. It takes about an hour, but it is the middle of the night. I've been drinking. So I leave her house and I start walking to Ashburton, and it's this long hill and there's no lights or anything like that. And I'm walking down and I'm reminiscing on parts of the night and just cringing at my own neediness and people pleasingness and an urge to be friends with this girl. Why did I say that? What am I doing? Who am I? What is this life? And about halfway home, I just fall in a massive hole.
No.
And I suddenly realized, oh yeah, they were doing all these roadworks here. And so I step proper Looney Tunes, Wile E. Coyote style, into this massive hole. And I just remember lying there in this hole, kind of dazed and confused, just staring at the sky, staring at the stars, and being like, I could just stay in this hole forever. This hole feels like such a metaphor for my life right now. And in my memory, I stayed in that hole for a good half an hour. Probably realistically, it was a few minutes. I just was lying there and trying desperately to be someone that I'm not. But then I got up, I got myself out of the hole. I walked the rest of the way home and got home. Couldn't actually get in. The door was locked. But I went to my boyfriend's place, who had somehow found out that I had been at his ex's place, and so it was a bit weird with me and standoffish. I was like, okay, I'm just going to call my mum. So I went back home, called my mum early hours of the morning. She was very kind to me, welcomed me in, and she had saved me some chicken satay in the fridge. So that is my walking hole ending with chicken story.
And so when you were lying in this hole, did you think there was a moment of kind of realization about your life?
Yeah. It did feel like that hole was a sign from the universe to just shake some sense into me and
Mm.
stop trying to be all things to all people. Sometimes you just need to fall in a hole.
Yeah. And it's interesting how that moment of realization seems to be a theme on this podcast. I'm going to go for this weird sense of trying to be something or not, and this sense of trying a bit too hard.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay. And then there's this moment of realization which involves the whole somehow. So I'll try and bring that in there as well. What did you think of that?
That was so fun. It's so cool to see how it's interpreted and those beats of the story. I think that beginning, that nervousness, that fidgetiness, I really felt palpable. That itchy feeling that was captured really well. And how that evolved was really great. It started with this kind of anxiety, this like buzzing, shaking anxiety, which kind of soothed into something else, but that was always constantly there. There's still that anxiety buzzing at the bottom of your stomach, but you're beginning to smooth over it. That moment of the fall, that very sudden puncturing of everything that's come before, was perfect. Just some sense being like knocked into you by the universe. And then what's really interesting is after that fall, that moment of realization, that softer twinkliness, almost feels like us here now, like us looking at these past memories and being able to make fun of them and find some peace and joy in them. When we tell stories and when we listen to music, it's like all different parts of time in your life can come together and be consolidated, and really felt like that happened at the end there. But you found lots of humour and buoyancy in it, which was really lush.
At the end, I was imagining the stars. Before that, I was going for that sense of optimism that you might become a friend. It's like they're sending kind of major chords. To me, it's like that sense of optimism, but it's not very natural. Like the kind of major triads is almost a kind of like 90s dance sort of idea, It's like they're not really in the key, so they create this sense of fake optimism.
There's something in it that feels quite teenage as well,
Mm.
like those things together, those notes together. There's that hopefulness and that sort of anxiety. I don't know about you, but I feel like I spent a lot of my teenage years trying to emulate the life that I should be living from TV shows and books and things like that. We're really reaching for something, but it's not quite clicking. There's like a discordancy here that isn't working because you're trying so hard to make it work.
You're trying really hard to make it work, yeah. See, and it's just never gonna work because it's not you, is it?
And that's so much of teenage life, right? I should be this way, and these are the people I should be spending my time with. And I should be this kind of person. Layers and layers of all this self doubt and anxiety and hope, which is a beautiful thing, but an exhausting thing.
Another story then?
Yes, I have a story. This is a story of Zuzu, the Christmas tree. Called Zuzu after the youngest daughter in It's a Wonderful Life.
Okay. I've never named a Christmas tree. That's so organized.
I first met Zuzu at the Sainsbury's, Clifton Down Sainsbury's. So it was around Christmas, obviously. We needed a Christmas tree for our little flat. And where I used to live up in Redland, it was like 25-minute walk to Sainsbury's on Clifton Down. So I went in there and I picked up the Christmas tree pot. Those like little ones that you can hold in your hands. Sometimes you're just drawn to a particular tree. Usually for me, it's the slightly scrawnier ones that I'm like, oh, no one else is going to pick you, so I'm going to pick you. And I took Zuzu back in my rucksack. So I put the pot in my rucksack with the tree sticking up over my head. And I love that tree. We brought it back and we decorated it. And my partner and I decided, let's try and grow this tree. Let's try and make sure that we have it again next year. So we put it up in the garden and she lived to the next year. And we'd become so close to Zuzu. This is 2 years of a Sainsbury's Christmas tree pot. Usually they just die a few days after Christmas. So we're like, let's do it another year, a third year. Come on, Zuzu, you're doing so well. Put her back in the garden over the summer, watered her, made sure she was fine. We repotted her into a bigger pot because she had gotten pretty big at this point. And then one day, so I'm out and I come back home, and this is like in October. It's not Christmas yet, but Zuzu is gone from my garden. And I'm like, what is happening? What? Someone's stolen my tree. What kind of maniac steals a Christmas tree from a garden? And honestly, I was obsessed with this case for a long time because I was like, how could this happen? Because where we lived, it was like not a big open garden. You had to walk through a gate to come into the garden, pick up the tree, walk back out of the gate, like we were set back from the road. Everybody that I saw over this time, I would tell them about my Christmas tree. I'd written little notes to the neighbours. Do you know where it is? I posted it in like the neighbours' letterboxes. I posted about it on Reddit. I even put up a sign. I became so fixated on who would do this. It came to Christmas. We got a new tree. That's just a sad thing that has happened to me in my life. But then, about 2 or 3 weeks after Christmas, my partner and I are walking home from the pub. And we walk up the steps to our flat, the outside steps, and a car comes past with the lights on and lights up our neighbour's garden. And I was like, that's Zuzu. And we walked round, we snuck round into that back garden, and it was my Christmas tree. So they put it outside, and they'd clearly just had my Christmas tree and not watered it at all. We like picked it up and brought it back round to our flat. It was dying, it was all brown. The only thing left was a single Christmas decoration, which was a plastic saxophone. That just adds insult to injury. And I posted a letter through their door. It was like a block of flats, so I didn't know which person it was. And said, to the person who stole my Christmas tree, why did you do this? Please, this is my number. Let's have a conversation because I want to understand what happened. They never got back to me. Zuzu came home. She did die shortly afterwards. We tried to resuscitate her, but it wasn't to be. But at least she spent her last few days back in our flat.
So your neighbour had stolen them and her? and just moved to the garden. Strange thing to do.
What a strange thing to do. And like, and also I posted letters to all my neighbours' post boxes saying someone stole my tree, which I clearly saw and just didn't act on. I'm secretly hoping they listen to this podcast and feel very guilty.
I reckon to go for the sense of Christmas times, and then you pick up this tree, and then you put it in your rucksack, which is quite a tricky thing to do, I can imagine. Sort of struggle with at home. And then I think you can go to this disappearance and this thinking, how would someone do this? This sense of betrayal. Right? And then the kind of criminal investigation that you launch, trying to find anyone who might know the whereabouts of this tree. And then it's you eventually you find out the theft and its demise after that. So it's a bit of a sad ending, but hey, it's the way.
Sometimes that's life, isn't it? It's like a true crime documentary.
Yeah.
Nice. So dramatic. I love it. I can just imagine myself, if it were a film, that kind of middle section, me just tossing and turning in bed, like, oh my God, what's going on? Waking up in the middle of the night to post post online about it. Yeah, that worked so well. That was such a sad ending. If that person listens to this podcast, they're going to feel terrible.
Did you get the sense of the sort of Christmassy vibe at the beginning? I was trying to remember a Christmas song, but I couldn't really, so I just
Had those Christmassy tones.
that kind of stuff.
What is it that makes the song sound Christmassy?
Sparkly kind of stuff, like twinkly notes is a whole kind of major to minor thing. There's bells kind of stuff, sleigh bells, I don't know. And then there's some kind of bouncy kind of jinka 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 jinka. And then there's probably a terrible saxophone solo that always makes it absolutely awful kind of screech.
I was thinking just last Christmas about like Jingle Bells, the song Jingle Bells, and how that must be interpolated in more songs than any other song. Because almost every single Christmas song has some interpolation of Jingle Bells somewhere in it. Yeah. If you think about, like, obviously River by Joni Mitchell starts with that, because My partner is bang into Christmas. He's a big Christmas fiend. Over the whole of December, it's all we listen to. And so many of those songs had a little tiny bit of Jingle Bells in somewhere, sometimes just at the very end for like the outro. I'd be interested to like do some research into that, like how many songs feature Jingle Bells.
It's amazing the kind of simple but iconic melody, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess it's one of those ones people say if you have a song stuck in your head and you just go round and round, it's because you can't complete it and your brain is trying to complete it, but you can't get to the next point. And so the best thing to do is to sing Happy Birthday because that is like a short song, short melody that you know the entirety of. Like you can sing it beginning to end and it'll get the song that's stuck in your head out of your head.
Wow.
I guess you could do the same thing with Jingle Bells.
Yeah. So that your brain is trying to find a conclusion. The song is stuck in your head and it can't find the conclusion.
Yeah.
Does that mean songs that are less conclusive, like less grounded, are they more likely to stick in your head?
Yeah, I reckon so. Because when you get a song stuck in your head, it's almost always the same few lines, right? It's like a phrase that keeps repeating and repeating. And you wouldn't be able to do the full song. It doesn't have that return, that moment where it's like, okay, that song's finished. Whereas there are these little things that we know from childhood that are just like within us that we know, okay, that's the end of that. That rounds that off. And I think our heads are always trying to find sense of things and to find the conclusion of things so you can move on. Those little melodies that we know that kind of live within us can help us to break through that frustration of having the same line going over and over in your head.
You notice a lot of sort of phone notifications sounds are often incconcluded. You rarely hear one that's like, okay, nice. Don't have to do anything about that.
Yeah, it's like an active thing. It's like, well, you have to complete this. This isn't finished without you.
I mean, it's a whole kind of science. They've obviously thought about the fact that if we make it sound like this with unconcluded melody, then people are going to look at their phone more.
Yeah. Man, that's so interesting. And it's funny as well, those sounds, how ingrained they become, similar to those melodies we know from childhood. In our show Outlier, there is a moment, because that's set around the 2010s. And there's a moment at the top of the second act where two people are talking on Facebook. And Emmy, our harpist, plays the old Facebook messenger noise, like bloop, on the harp. It's not sounded like that for ages, but whenever we did it, there was always like this recognition in the audience and people going, I know that I need to do something now.
Amazing. So you had a whole audience doing that. That's the power of the ident, isn't it? So what did you get out of this podcast?
I just love working with musicians. It's something that's a big part of my practice anyway. And I'm always really interested in how we interpret stories and how different musicians work differently. So yeah, it's just been so nice to come and tell these little stories, just little parts of life that I wouldn't necessarily take that forward to be a whole show necessarily, but we can just play around with those stories that make us up. And it feels like a kind of a translation of sorts of like how we understand stories and how we understand each other. Yeah, it's such a cool concept and it's such an interesting one as well because everyone's going to come to it differently. Coming into a space and not knowing what to expect at all is always like really rewarding, I think, when you're working creatively with somebody. So yeah, it was really fun.
Cool. And you got something out of the music?
Yeah, definitely. What I mean when I say that translation is being able to come to someone whose practice is different to yours and give them something and see how they interpret that and how the music can guide us through. It would be so interesting to give people the music to listen to, and each person is going to have a different version of what they think the story might be that inspired it. And for them to then listen to the story and then listen to the music again, I don't know, you can go back and forth with that for ages. It's such a good exercise of storytelling through music.
Where can people sort of find you online?
My website is malkegs.com because no one can spell my full name, so that's easier, malkegs. And I'm on Instagram as well, mal.keg.
Is there anything you want to promote?
So The Colour of Dinosaurs is on tour, the show that we spoke about earlier. So that is going to Southampton, and I think there's going to be another London run as well, and some more tour dates are going to come out in the next few weeks. So if you have a look on my website, then you'll be able to find the tour dates for The Colour of Dinosaurs.
Nice. Yeah, it's very good. I've seen it. It had me singing along. Thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
join us again for another episode of Impro Pod. Thanks for listening. Thanks to Luke Marzek, featured on episode 32, for providing the saxophone interludes. You can find out more about him and his music at lukemarzek.com.